So, bienvenue, bienvenida, welcome. I am your host for this very exciting event. My name is Alicia Ali, and I am from the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. And this is the Oecs Development Strategy Implementation Project launch. The project is one of the components under the Oecs EU Rights Program, that is the Regional Integration through Growth, Harmonization, and Technology Program. And before we jump into our proceedings today, I would like to recognize all of our special guests. We have Minister Wayne Gerard, who is the chair of the Oecs Economic Affairs Council of Ministers, or as we like to call the EAC. We have Director of the Economic Affairs and Regional Integration Division of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States Commission, Mrs. Jacqueline Emmanuel Flood. Now we have a very special guest from Barbados, Her Excellency Ambassador Małgorzata Wasilewska. She's the head of the delegation of the European Union to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean, and CARICOM and CARIFORUM. We are also pleased to have with us our Oecs commissioners. Welcome. Dr. Valda Henry is here. She is the Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, the ECCB. Frederico Bongalia, who is the Deputy Director of the OECD Development Center, is here, and we are happy to have you. Jan Relander, Head of the Country Diagnostics and Strategy of the OECD Development Center, is also here with us, a critical partner to the Oecs Commission. We have senior public servants of our Oecs member states, staff of the Oecs Commission, and all of the arms of the Oecs. We also have citizens of our Oecs member states who are specially invited guests for this auspicious occasion. I would like to call on the Director of Economic Affairs and Regional Integration for the Oecs Commission, Mrs. Jacqueline Emmanuel Flood, to deliver our remarks here this morning. Mrs. Flood.
Good morning, everyone, and Alicia. It is indeed a pleasure to be here this morning to present these brief remarks on this very important occasion. First of all, I do want to apologize for the absence of the Director General, Dr. Didicus Jules, who unfortunately is ill today and would very much have wanted to be here. This has been a very important project for us, especially in the difficult season that we have gone through, the COVID season. I think we are really, really happy to be at this stage today. So let me again, for protocol, recognize the very important people in our midst this morning. The Honorable Wayne Gerard, Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Economic Development, and Youth Economy for St. Lucia, who, as the chair has said, is the chair of the Oecs Economic Affairs Council. I want to also recognize, I'm got it right, Her Excellency Ambassador Małgorzata Wasilewska, head of the delegation of the European Union in Barbados, and not only for Barbados, but the Eastern Caribbean and CARICOM, CARIFORUM. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Ambassador. Our Oecs commissioners who are with us, Dr. Valda Henry, Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Mr. Frederico Bongalia, I hope I got that right, Deputy Director of the OEC Development Center, and of course, our dear Jan Relander, the head of the Country Diagnostic Strategy for the Oecs Development Center, who've been working with us for over the last 14 months. The staff of the Oecs Commission and the ECCB and the citizens of the member states who are with us. I really wish to join, with the Mrs. of Ceremony, who in welcoming you today, to this particular meeting. I really appreciate everyone who have come because, it is a very big occasion for us. And I take the opportunity to emphasize the importance of the work of this Oecs Commission, in particular, the Economic Affairs Council in bringing us to this point today. In the past week, the Oecs celebrated its 41st anniversary, and the Oecs as a regional integration movement. It is in this context of the Economic Union that this year represents 12 years since the signing of the revised Treaty of Bastille, which established the Union. Over the past decades, the Oecs has, without a doubt, advance the development agenda of the OECS nations. The single currency, the single court, the pool procurement system, and within the economic union, the free movement of persons are symbols with which the OECS union has been successful among our nations. These regional integration achievements also allow our nations to weather the storms, in particular the ongoing COVID pandemic and other challenges that we have faced. The road to be traveled, however, is still lengthy and challenging. As OECS member states continue to pursue their common development goals through implementation of this economic union, we recognize the need to continue to support these efforts. The collaboration between the OECS Commission and the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, the ECCB, to produce an OECS development strategy is one key initiative in that regard. The ODS, as we affectionately call it, articulates the ambitions of our member states to address the economic growth, social development, and environmental sustainability ambitions. The ODS was launched in 2019 in collaboration with the ECCB, as I have said, and we both institutions remain valuable partners in advancing the initiative. We are committed to ensure that the strategy progresses from a document through effective implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and knowledge sharing. It is with this in mind that we appreciate and we want to point out the financial support provided by the European Union under the 11th EDF Rights Program to allow us to be able to gain the technical input and support from the OECD Development Center. And we have been able, through this collaboration, to advance from a mere inception document to one with clear policy measures to support its implementation. Today, as we gather here, from about 14 months of working together, the OECS Commission staff, along with the OECD Development Center, have engaged senior public servants of the OECS member states to discuss the OECS development strategy implementation. Several consultations were held with numerous national stakeholders in this regard. This process, however, allowed each member state to conduct a thorough assessment of the strategy, its indicators and targets. Member states were able to articulate their policy priorities and objectives through the selection of specific country targets. At the OECS Commission level, we've come to recognize the need to strengthen member states' ability to monitor implementation efforts. And I want to pause a second to say that this is one of the main reasons for this project. And I want to thank the EU technical officials, Dr. Boyce and Felipe Del Morta, who were very strong in advising that the effort that we should put here would be to help implementation, to close the implementation gap that we so often hear about in the OECS. The project, as I have said, in collaboration with the OECD Development Center, has led to the development of a scorecard to monitor member states' attainment of the country's specific targets within the OECS development strategy. We believe that the monitoring framework that has been developed through this project is a useful tool which will, in addition to measuring the attainment of the agreed targets in the ODS, but will also help member states to strengthen their policy responses to the common challenges inhibiting stronger economic growth, social development, and environmental sustainability. In closing, I wish to thank all our development partners who have supported this project. In particular, I must thank the OECD Development Center for collaborating with us on this project in what turned out to be a much lengthier journey because of the challenges of the COVID-19. I also wish to express our gratitude to the European Union in general, but also to Dr. Boyce and to Felipe Del Morta, whom I have mentioned and singled out for supporting this initiative from its genesis. I want to also express my appreciation to all the member states, the technical officers who have worked with us throughout the last 14 months to bring us to this point. Right now, I wish to encourage the member states to maximize the use of the scorecard as a tool for monitoring, for assisting in implementation firstly, rather, and for monitoring their economic development efforts. I thank you, and that I've been able to make those few remarks on behalf of the Director General, and I look forward to a very successful engagement today as we officially launch the OECD, the ODS implementation framework. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Director Flood, and I do share in your excitement, and I think a lot of us are really excited to see how the scorecard will develop our region, and we will hear a little bit more about that later. But we do have our chair of the Economic Affairs Council, Minister Wayne Gerard, with us, and I now invite him to deliver his remarks. Minister Gerard.
Good morning, Alicia. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning to all. It is my honor on behalf of the government and people of St. Lucia to welcome you to this meeting of the Economic Affairs Council. While the EAC has not met regularly, it is my hope that today's meeting will provide an opportunity for the rebirth of this very important organ of the OECS. This organ has as its principal responsibility the mandate to provide guidance and to support the implementation of the economic union amongst our nations. I would like to acknowledge those amongst us, starting with Her Excellency Ambassador Malgorzata Wasiluska, head of the delegation of the European Union to Barbados, Eastern Caribbean states, the OECS, CARICOM, CARIFORUM, OECS commissioners, His Excellency Felix Gregoire of Dominica, Her Excellency Elmer Jean Isaac of St. Lucia, and Ms. Deborah Lewis of Montserrat. Also like to recognize Dr. Valda Henry, the Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Ms. Jacqueline Flood, Emmanuel Flood, Director, Economic Affairs and the Regional Integration Division, OECS Commission, Mr. Federico Bonaglia, Deputy Director, OECD Development Center, Mr. Jan Rylander, Head of the Country Diagnostics and Strategy OECS Development Center, senior officials of the OECS member states, staff of the OECS Commission, and staff of sister institutions, citizens of the OECS member states. The signing of the revised Treaty of Basseterre in 2010 was in many ways our nation's articulation of the way forward through economic integration for addressing common economic, social, and environmental challenges that confront us as small island developing states. Whether it be on the streets of Castries or Roseau or St. John's, the problems of tepid growth, high public debt and unemployment, poverty, and limited economic development remains a challenge for us all. To add to these woes, today, we include the wrath of climate change, which has manifested in significant devastation and loss for our nations. Hence, there is no question that our economies need to pivot in this COVID-19 pandemic and war era to strengthen our individual and collective responses to address these challenges and others that are packaged under the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals agenda. The question for all of us, however, is how do we go about doing this? How do we pivot to a post-COVID-19 pandemic and war era with stronger, globally competitive, and more agile economies? In St. Lucia, the government has taken the decision to build a robust youth economy program to respond to some of these challenges and national needs. We also continue to note the value in having an economic union among our nations, whose objectives include promoting rapid and sustainable economic growth, sustainable social development, and equitable distribution of resources, among other important objectives. Historically, and in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, we have learned that regional integration amongst our nations is a useful and necessary economic development strategy. The collective use of our limited resources, the sharing of our expertise, and the creation of opportunities for doing business regionally have allowed us for more effective responses to these common challenges. In this regard, the OECS Development Strategy, ODS, has been developed with a view to provide our nations with a regional strategy to address our national and regional economic development needs in this current era of uncertainty. Firstly, the ODS presents us with an important economic, social, and environmental indicator that we need to measure more regularly. Moreover, through the collaboration with the OECD Development Center, the ODS has been subjected to international benchmarking standards in an effort to ensure that it is responsive to the urgent development needs of our nations, especially given this period of ongoing international crises. Through this support, OECS member states have articulated development priorities and policy ambitions that have been agreed to. I believe that the ODS monitoring framework will support our nation's ability to advance the implementation of the ODS itself, as well as assisting to track the achievement of other national, regional, and international mandates. The scorecard that has been developed with the support of the OECD Development Center is a significant undertaking to support the monitoring effort. Today, we have gathered here as stewards of our people to receive a detailed presentation on the ODS monitoring tool and to provide our endorsement and commitment to the OECS Commission that we will seek to make this tool a central feature in our economic development monitoring efforts nationally. Following today's launch of the scorecard for the ODS, we look forward to receiving the OECS Commission regular updates on the implementation of the ODS through the convening of more meetings of this organ for this purpose and for broad supervision of the Economic Union Work Program. I also want to take this opportunity to encourage all colleague ministers to continue supporting the implementation of the ODS and the active use of the scorecard in their national economic development planning activities. As I end my brief remarks this morning, I wish to express my gratitude for your presence here today. I wish to encourage your active engagement at this meeting and look forward to a successful launch of the ODS scorecard and our collaboration on the implementation activities to come. I thank you immensely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And as you heard, this ODS is really just bigger than the Eastern Caribbean. It is bigger than the OECS Commission. We are focused on collaboration. And as you heard from Director Flood, some of our partners, we would not be here without you. And speaking of partnership, it is time now for me to welcome the Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Dr. Valda Henry, to deliver remarks this morning. Welcome, Dr. Henry.
Thank you so much, Aisha. It's wonderful to be here. I'm representing Governor Antoine. The Honorable Wayne Gerard, the Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Economic Development and the Youth Economy, and the Chair of the EAC. Honorable Dr. Timothy Harris, Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, National Security, Sustainable Development, Constituency Empowerment, Human Resource Management and Information, St. Kitts and Nevis. Honorable Joseph E. Farrell, Premier of Montserrat, and Minister of Finance and Economic Management. Honorable Lennox Weston, Minister of Works and Minister of State within the Ministry of Finance and Corporate Governance of Antigua and Barbuda. Honorable Dr. Vince Henderson, Minister of Planning, Economic Development, Climate Resilience, Sustainable Development and Renewable Energy of the Commonwealth of Dominica. Honorable Oliver Joseph, Minister for Trade, Industry and Consumer Affairs of Grenada. Honorable Camilo Gonzalez, Minister of Finance and Economic Planning of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Mrs. Jacqueline Flood, Director, Economic Affairs and Regional Integration, Division of the OECS, who also spoke on behalf of His Excellency Dr. Didicus Jules, Director General of the OECS, Her Excellency Ambassador Malgorzata Wasilewska, Head of Delegation of the European Union to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean States, the OECS and CARICOM CARIFORUM, all the OECS commissioners, Mr. Federico Bonagalia, Deputy Director of the OECD Development Center, Mr. John Rialander, Head of the Country Diagnostics and Strategy OECD Development Center, staff of the OECS Commission, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and other sister institutions, citizens of the OECS member states. Indeed, it's a pleasure, as I said already, and an honor to be here. I have come to recognize through my years of work that without accountability, there can be no performance. The OECS development strategy is, as Dr. Didacus Jules in his forward remarks in the ODS document stated, a statement of intent with a broad outline of how intended outcomes are to be arrived at. Strategies and action plans in and of themselves do not achieve anything. Achievement of these outcomes require the systematic, coordinated attention and efforts of the parties involved. Governor Antwine, also in the forward, opined, the OECS development strategy provides a welcomed and unique opportunity for a coherent and coordinated approach to growth acceleration and resilience building of our region. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank shares the vision encapsulated within the strategy. So the question becomes, how would we know whether the outcomes are being achieved and the vision encapsulated in the ODS is being fulfilled? One of the key ways is through the OECS Development Strategy Scorecard developed by the OECD Development Center. And that's what we are here today to find out much more about. That scorecard is going to be so important in helping us to monitor our performance, to take corrective actions where necessary. And so before going any further, I want to express our thanks and gratitude to the OECD for its partnership in working to give life to the ODS. A scorecard is a performance management tool that identifies the key performance targets, indicates the level of performance achieved, serves as a monitoring tool, guides the corrective or further actions needed, and confirms the point of celebration of the goals achieved. It is also about celebrating our wins, so that gives us the momentum to continue in our pursuit of the goals encapsulated in the OECS development strategy. In fact, the scorecard developed and for which we would get to know much more today is an effective accountability tool. The ODS was formulated in 2018, covered the period 2018 to 2028, was founded on 3 key pillars: economic growth, human and social well-being, sustainable use of natural endowments. These pillars are still relevant, and one may argue even more relevant on the heels of the COVID-19 pandemic, the geopolitical events, including the Russia-Ukraine wars, and the attendant supply chain issues. These events have no doubt impacted the attainment of some of the original targets. The strategy scorecard will provide information on results in a timely manner to enable proactive actions. At the inaugural meeting of the Economic Affairs Council on July 12, 2014, the then chairman, Dr. Colin McIntyre of the Commonwealth of Dominica, said to the members, "We have to be bold, creative, and courageous in discharging our duties. We must signal to the Commission the changes that are required to bring success to the OECS. If there was ever a time for this advice and exhortation, it is now. The scarring of the pandemic on our economies, education systems, and social sectors must produce a sense of urgency, the need for immediate action, and the push towards innovation and collective action. We need to act boldly now. ECCB, as a development partner of the OECS, embodies these words in our efforts. In addition to our star mantra, our three declarations: competent but caring, prudent yet proactive, imaginative and industrious, combined with a growth mindset, frame our actions. Our strategic plan of 2017-2021 was under the theme, transforming the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union together. And our strategic plan 2022 to 2026 is under the theme, transforming the ECCU through innovation and collective action. Our transformation agenda continues. For without transformation, we will see no real growth in the three pillars of the ODS. Our 5 pillars of transformation are financial stability, payments modernization and financial inclusion, environmental, social, and corporate governance, digital transformation, and organizational effectiveness and development. Our progress report includes the following. We launched the Dcash across 7 of our 8 member states, with our last launch being planned for July of 2022. We are on our way to achieving net zero carbon emissions by December 2022 with our campus greening program. There's effective oversight of the financial market infrastructure, the 4Cs, RGTS, and the ECAH-CHSI. Advanced stages for the introduction of the Credit Bureau by December 2022. Advanced stages to launch our new website in the near future. We are at the research stage for the establishment of the regional standard setting body and the deposit insurance scheme. Advanced stages of the bank-wide IT projects. Data analytics is now at the forefront to guide our policy actions, and our legal and policy framework created to support the oversight and policy functions of the bank. And together with our own ECCB strategic plan, the ODCS, all of those plans will assist us and facilitate the region's attainment and our work towards the attainment of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. ECCB continues to pledge its support and commitment to partnering with the OECS in transforming our region, forever mindful of the old African proverb identified by Governor Antoine in the foreword to the ODS. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Together, we champion the cause of our region. Together, we work together boldly, creatively, courageously to advance the good of our people, transforming their lives where they thrive and not just strive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henry. And what a way to encompass, everything that we are doing here today. And I really do believe what Dr. Henry is saying. We do need a coordinated and coherent approach to build our region. And the scorecard is a critical tool to keep us on course. And on that note, we are pleased to have with us today our friends from the European Union. We are at this stage with the OECS development strategy because of the support from the EU through the regional integration, through growth harmonization and technology program, or as we like to call it in-house, the RIGHT program for the Eastern Caribbean. Please welcome the head of the European delegation to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean, and CARICOM and CARIFORUM, Ambassador Małgorzata Wasilewska. I hope I did you justice. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was a beautiful pronunciation. I thank you for that. Heads of government and honorable ministers of the Economic Affairs Council, Honorable Wayne Gerard, Chairman of the EAC, Director Jacqueline Flood, representing Dr. Didacus Jules, Director General of the Oecs, Dr. Valda Henry, Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Mr. Federico Bonaglia, Deputy Director, OECD Development Center, other distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my pleasure to join you this morning for this extraordinary meeting of the Economic Affairs Council and the launch of the monitoring framework for the OECS development strategy. The European Union congratulates the collaboration between the Organization of the Eastern Caribbean States and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in being able to bring this tangible product to reality. We are pleased to have provided support of this scorecard, which we hope will become an essential tool for the decision makers across the OECS. We note that the scorecard aptly captures several key outcomes across the three interrelated pillars of the development strategy, namely economic growth, human and social well-being, and sustainable use of natural endowments. As such, the scorecard provides an effective means of not only monitoring progress in the implementation of the strategy, but also in assisting member states to contextualize that progress against international benchmarks. Further, we find the delivery of this scorecard midway in the life of the EU-funded regional integration through growth, harmonization, and technology program to be timely. We believe it provides a reliable lens through which there can be a better assessment of the contribution of the program outcomes to the overall achievement of the objectives of the OECS development strategy. We also recognize that one of the key challenges faced by regional decision makers is having access to accurate, reliable, and timely information on which to base policy and programming decisions. Often, there is a conundrum with the large quantities of information collected residing in disparate silos across agencies with limited access by those who need it to support strategic development and reporting at the national, regional, and global levels. I suspect many of you are familiar with the adage, what gets measured gets done. I hope that through tools such as this new scorecard, you will continually measure the good work the OECS has done and continues to do in enhancing regional integration while building a more economical, socially robust, and resilient circular economy. I recognize we are here today to launch this new tool. However, in the interest of us all, the success of this instrument must go far beyond the life of this project and meeting. I therefore encourage OECS member states to support the continued viability of the scorecard through ensuring it remains current. Most importantly, the ultimate measurement of success will come from use of the scorecard to monitor economic development and inform national and regional policies which redound to the benefit of all OECS citizens. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And I can tell you, you and Dr. Jules are on the same page when you say what gets measured gets done. So you know you have the support of our Director General on that. And much work has gone into the development of the ODS scorecard. Our partners at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, as you've been hearing quite a bit during this launch, are staying true to their mandate. Better policies for better lives. Please welcome the Deputy Head of the OECD Development Center, Mr. Federico Bonaglia. Did I get that right, Mr. Bonaglia?
Thank you, Alicia. You got it perfectly right.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a great privilege for me and a great honor to be participating in this meeting with such distinguished participants. I have to apologize upfront because I am in Brussels and there is a bit of noise here where I am, and I hope that this will not bother you are hearing me well. But let me also say that the fact of being in Brussels is quite fitting because we are here at the European Development Days discussing ways of strengthening partnerships with all regions of the world. And we were this morning, Brussels time, discussing how the European Union can strengthen its partnership with Latin America and the Caribbean. And the example, the event that we're having today is a perfect example of how we can do exactly that, building stronger partnerships for the interest of the region, in this case, of the Eastern Caribbean countries. So let me join previous speakers in thanking you for inviting and in welcoming and greeting His Excellency Minister Wayne Gerard, all the ministers and participants of the Economic Affairs Council, Deputy Governor Henry, Director Jacqueline, Ambassador Vasilevska, and all the distinguished participants that are assisting to this meeting. As I said, it's a great honor for us to be here with you. And I would like to echo what was just said by Deputy Governor Henry, saying that who goes, if you want to go far, you have to go together. And we are here because we want to go far with you. We want to strengthen our partnership with OECS. We want to make sure that the excellent work that we have done with you over the last 14 months is useful. It responds to your priorities. It helps you in advancing the goals of your strategy, but also helps us at the OECD Development Center to better understand the specific challenges and opportunities of your region, because we are all in this together, and we understand what we want to understand better what the specific challenges and needs of the region have, so that we can work hand in hand to advance your own strategic goals. Let me say that the partnership and the journey that we have undertaken together make us very proud. This is the first time in our history that we cooperate with the OECS. And I would like to thank all of those who made this possible, including the European Union, who kindly provided us support to advance this project. We have learned a lot throughout this process. We hope that the tool that we have developed will be useful for you, and my colleague Jan Wilander will certainly go into great detail in showing how this tool can be useful. You, several speakers before me, already said the most important things. It is about development, it is about strategies, it is about measuring implementation, and it's about resources, making sure that resources for implementation are there. So I will not be long in my remarks. Just would like to say that in this experience that we have had with you, we were able to appreciate the very significant progress that the countries of the OECS have made in terms of improving the living standards, in terms of advancing regional integration. And we have also been reading very carefully the strategy that we have put in place that highlights some of the challenges that still remain to be addressed. Of course, one of the greatest challenges is how to create better opportunities for the youth. And given the current situation of double shocks from COVID and the global ramification of the conflict in Ukraine, but also the looming, actually not so looming, the very present climate crisis that we are all confronted with, but is of course more dangerous and more present in parts of the world like the Eastern Caribbean. All these must be a call to action to put all the necessary resources, all the necessary effort for the implementation of this important development strategy. I believe and I hope that the regional strategy scorecard that we have developed together with you will be useful in overcoming the challenges that we have discussed. The 40 indicators that we have developed within this scorecard around the 3 pillars of the regional development strategy try to respond to the needs and objectives that we have identified. We have to say that this process was facilitated by the OECD, but key ingredient for successful implementation is ownership. And we're very proud to say that this scorecard has been discussed and validated with a number of focal points and colleagues in your organization and in the member states. So going forward, as many of you already said, it's important that we make the best use possible of this scorecard that we implement it, and that we learn from implementation to identify what works, what could work better, what does not work, and that we jointly identify ways of improving policymakers' actions so that they can deliver better policies for better lives. In this respect, you can certainly count with the OECD Development Center. We are proud of having a number of countries from your region, from the broader Latin American and Caribbean region, as members of the Development Center, and we certainly look forward to identifying ways of further strengthening the cooperation with the OECS and its member countries. With this, I would like to conclude, thanking you again for your great support and welcoming, and giving back the floor to you, Alicia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And I cannot underscore how much we appreciate our colleagues over at OECD. And on that note, I do know some of our member states do have interventions to make at this stage. So I will now call on our colleagues from Dominica to go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alicia, and good morning to everyone here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for the opportunity to represent Dominica in giving my feedback on the ODS strategy and the scorecard. I am Gloria Joseph, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Planning, Economic Development, Climate Resilience, Sustainable Development, and Renewable Energy. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. And I do apologize for the absence of my minister, Honorable Dr. Vince Henderson, who due to other pressing obligations could not have made it to the meeting this morning, but extends his very best wishes. I would like to start with a brief quote. I'm going to be very brief. And it says, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 3 sharpening the axe." And that was a quote by Abraham Lincoln. 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 3 hours sharpening the axe. And I believe that is what the Commission has done, spend the first 3 hours, and that 3 hours could extend into a considerable portion of time, sharpening the axe of the development strategy and ensuring that we have something that we can work with among the member states, but something that we can measure. I'm elated to see Dr. Valder Henry, our own Dominican national. Dr. Henry, good morning. I must recognize you, certainly, yes. And in working with the ODS team, the OECD team, Jan and Clarence Henry, I found the assessment tool was very important, a very important development for us. We have development strategies all the time. They are great in print, they're great in writing, they're good strategies. However, like Dr. Henry said, unless we monitor, measure, evaluate, and report, we would not know effectively how we're performing. And for us in Dominica, one of the things that we do is we ensure that whatever plans and strategies that we collaborate with our development partners and sister organizations on, they are completely aligned to our own National Resilience Development Strategy, which is our plan to 2030, and our Climate and Resilience and Recovery Plan. All right, so we have a strategy and a plan, both leading into 2030. And both our strategy and our plans are well aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals. So when we received the draft of the ODS, we went to do the thing that was natural, to see how well aligned it is to our development strategy and plan. I would say, speaking for our country, and maybe it's the same in many of the other member states, that we can be inundated having our own national strategy and plan, and having at the same time to implement other strategies and plans of development, what we consider to be order, right? Until we own it and it becomes localized within our own plan, it can appear to be onerous. And so you have to now determine, what do I focus on? Do I focus on the national priority? What is dictated? What is handed over by my government to implement? Or do I focus on other development strategies and plans that are coming from outside of the jurisdiction? We found out that the ODS resonated very, very well, very tightly with what we are doing in Dominica. And the measurement of economic indicators, social and environmental indicators was something that we looked at very closely. It also opened our eyes to some of the other indicators that maybe we did not previously consider, but were important. I noted that for us, there were 13 economic indicators that we would be measured against, or we would allow ourselves to be measured against, 5 environmental indicators, 13 social indicators, but there were also 9 important indicators which had insufficient data. That was important for us to consider because we realized that the greatest challenge we are having is not that we don't do things or pursue our strategy, but the difficulty is being able to report. And I believe right across the region and maybe further afield, the data challenge is what compounds our situations and makes it very complex. So at the time when we're looking at the scorecard, we had to determine, do we have the baseline data that we need so that we can set the targets and work towards the targets and compare those national targets with the OECS or the ODS targets that have been set for us. And in some areas, we found it was easy to get baseline data, and in other areas, it was difficult. And so understanding that, we did not just set aside those particular targets, but we had to start work with our line ministries, which are the implementing entities for the ODS, to ensure that they were aware that they needed to collect the data to measure those indicators. And that is an ongoing concern, but something we're working towards in the Ministry of Planning to ensure that at reporting time, we can adequately and accurately report our performance. And that is very important in planning forward for us. It's very important that we know where we are now so that we can develop a strategy to where we want to go by a particular precise date. And so we agree that within the region, we are plagued with all sorts of existential threats. Some we didn't even see coming our way, like the COVID-19. And even for us in Dominica, when we developed our strategy and plan for the next 10 years, 8 years really, into 2030, we did not factor in the impact of a pandemic. And so it sends us right back to the drawing board to ensure that we cater for these kinds of disasters. And because of the climate disasters that we are plagued with, the increase of climate change, it becomes very important for us to be able to strategize, to plan, and to monitor our performance. So for us, we welcome the ODS, and we also welcome the scorecard. We got a chance to work with Jan and the team at OECD, play around with it and feel comfortable that this is something that the end users who have to supply the information that measures our performance against the targets find it a friendly tool to use. And so the team was here with us in Dominica, not only dealing with the virtual media, but right here in person with us, working with us to see how we could develop it even further, how we could utilize it, and how it will be used to measure our performance. So we are grateful, we are thankful, and our commitment remains with the OECS to implement the development strategy and to rely on you for your continued support that will cause us to have the impetus to drive this forward. So thank you very much. I look forward to us utilizing the tool effectively.
Thank you very much, P.S. Joseph. And it is really enlightening and enriching to hear about the tool from a user perspective. And P.S. Joseph made a very poignant point. When it comes to development, we have many priorities, and we do have to prioritize the priorities, which can be so difficult given our realities. And so we are so thankful that this tool is going to help keep us on track. And we want to hear from one of our other member states. We do have St. Lucia here represented by Ms. Skeeter Gibbs. Ms. Gibbs, the floor is yours.
Good morning to all. I would like to observe the protocol that has already been established. My name is Skeeter Gibbs, Acting Deputy Chief Economist in the Department of Economic Development in St. Lucia. The Department of Economic Development coordinated efforts for completion of the OECS target setting survey for St. Lucia. The department consulted with various stakeholders across the different ministries, departments and agencies across government to gain baseline data and obtain consensus on the targets for each indicator prior to completing the survey. The team from economic development was also in constant dialogue with the consultants from the OECD to obtain clarifications and to provide feedback on the respective indicators and targets in the survey. We found it to be quite user-friendly, as our colleague from Dominica indicated, and we believe that the tool is a useful tool for capturing information from each island to ensure that our collective views are reflected in the OECS scorecard. Currently, the department is in the preparatory stages for developing the next cycle of the medium-term development strategy for St. Lucia for the period 2021 to 2026. And the MTDS is expected to be underpinned by 3 broad pillars, namely social resilience, economic resilience, and environmental resilience. Therefore, the results from the OECS scorecard can be considered in formulating the monitoring and evaluation framework for our MTDS. So we look forward, the Department of Economic Development looks forward to further work with the OECS Commission to roll out the implementation of the development strategy. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gibbs. And I know we've been hearing a lot about the scorecard and a lot about the OECS development strategy, but more in an overall sort of format. So to give us an overview of the OECS development strategy and governance framework, I am pleased to welcome the Director of Economic Affairs and Regional Integration at the OECS Commission, Mrs. Jacqueline Emmanuel Flood. Director.
So thank you, everyone. I think we've heard a lot today, this morning. I'm really grateful for all the speakers, and some of what I'm going to share with you, perhaps you've already heard, because I heard was like the journey. But I just wanted to give an overall context before my colleague, I can call him that, Jan, after working with him for so long, can come and speak directly to the scorecard, to give you a sense of where we have come and how we have arrived at where we are today. I think we recognize already that the development strategy was prepared in 2018 and formally launched in 2019. I think the deputy governor spoke of that, and I think I did as well. So we had this strategy. I think all the member states were involved. It took us a number of years to get this strategy, and we decided that it was at a point where we could launch version 1. The challenge was to ensure that we had a cohesive approach across the member states in actually implementing the strategy. And so when we started this journey of developing a monitoring framework for implementation, the member states were initially consulted. And what I have before you are some of the critical things that emerged. Member states indicated that they're looking to the ODS as a guiding frame for their own development strategies. I think our colleague from Dominica kind of spoke to this. Most of the member states said that they had development strategies. Some of them were already in the process of implementation, but none of them had a proper framework for monitoring and for evaluation of the strategy. So it was clear that the ODS was coming and filling a very important gap. The importance of ensuring that there's alignment, as I think, again, Dominica and Sanusha spoke about, ensuring that what they do nationally really is aligned with what we do regionally, so an additional burden is not placed upon them. And member states are very clear in this. And the third very important perspective that we all shared was the basis that the ODS development strategy implementation framework would provide a basis for deeper collaboration and also for fundraising for common initiatives across the region. And I think we can all appreciate that what has emerged has actually kept true to those perspectives. So the expected outcomes and results, we agreed that there were going to be some definite immediate results and some more long-term outcomes. First of all was that in the process, we were going to have a revision of the OECS development strategy, because we recognized by the time we got onto this exercise that we had moved, the COVID-19 pandemic had come upon us, and we recognized that it was a time of maybe a very crucial time, so that in the process of developing the framework, we would also reassess the ODS. And that would be additional value and outcome from that. We wanted also to be sure that by the time we were done with this framework, we didn't just have a scorecard, but we also had a joint implementation plan. So from the reassessment of the strategy, we'd be able to identify key regional initiatives that we could collectively as a region implement together. And of course, the scorecard. It would have this tool that would be given to us that would be able to maintain and manage going forward. The outcomes that we all agreed to and we're excited about is that in this particular juncture, I think we've all mentioned not just COVID, now we are in the midst of international other kinds of crises, the Ukraine and Russia war, that we needed definitely coming out of all of that to be able to bolster economic growth, and we would be able to come away with some levers to do that. We would definitely be increased knowledge sharing and information sharing among member states, and that indeed has already been one of the better benefits that we have achieved, and also clearly enhanced development cooperation. So sitting here today as we are at this official launch, I think we can collectively feel confident that we have moved in the right direction in terms of harnessing some of these results and outcomes. So the process itself, we began in the intention that this perhaps could be done over a 6-month period. But of course, we went into 14 months. The project officially, the OECD officially ends at the end of this month. But because of COVID and the difficulty of travel, I think we all appreciate how we got to where we are and the time it has taken us. We began by meeting all the focal points. Each member state appointed an official focal point in the Ministry of Development Planning or Finance. There was a process of data gathering and research, which must always be done. We had individual country meetings. The OECD team did come when the travel was possible and visited some of our member states. Development of the scorecard, which you will see Jan is going to present. And we also met with key institutions and groups, because while at the center of this is, of course, the member states, the ECCB and the OECS Commission, we recognize some key development partners across the region whom we also sat down, discussed, got their input in terms of how they see the process emerging and the usefulness of the tool for their own purposes, principally among these being the CARICOM Development Fund. We approached the CDB and the Regional Statistical Institution and CARICOM. So the project timeline I have already shared with you. We began in April 2021 when the project was approved, and we are now here in June 2020. You'll realize from my presentation that we had done a lot of the stakeholder consultation, meeting member states. By December, we originally should have been at the point of setting targets, of target setting, and possibly to be at a launch. But I must say to you that the real challenge of this process turned out to be the target setting. Member states worked with us through the focal point for different ministries, but when it came to the point of setting targets, because you can't measure if you don't have a target. If you're not sure from the very beginning where you expected to be, then what are you measuring against? And it took us the better part of 6 months, I would say, to get there. But member states did come up with the work. They did work at it, and it allowed us as a region to look at targets that we had already set under other agreements, other conventions, and to be able to bring them together, to be able to put them within a framework where we'd be certain that we could be collectively pursuing them. So I think in the end, the extra time was really for extra benefit. And we are today at a point where we have set those targets and we are ready to unveil the scorecard to you. So as I mentioned, that was one of our major hurdles. So basically, where do we go from here? We are still very much at perhaps the very end of the review of the strategy itself. One of the results I had mentioned that we wanted to achieve, we are looking at the report on the assessment of the strategy. And out of this, we are in the process of an emerging ODS action plan, where we are identifying some of the key initiatives that are important to every member state across the region that we can pull together as a joint OECS implementation plan. This we expect to be completed by the end of June. Members have said to us that they would make sure that they want us to be certain, they want to see innovation, new ideas. Many things have been tried and failed. And so in the process, we have been challenged to be creative, to be innovative, and of course, to be able to come up with the indicators that there is, I would say, some degree of certainty that we can, in fact, continue to get the data and to measure. I think the speaker was very, very honest about the challenge of data, and I'm certainly at the end will speak about that. The OECS itself is, how would I put it? The OECS Commission itself is working on the other projects to be able to fill some of these data gaps. But clearly, one of the benefits and perhaps one of the truths that this whole process have unveiled to us is truly where we are in our data collection and data production for decision-making in the OECS region. And it's one of those key things that we have to work together to strengthen going forward. So the final push for us, I mentioned, is for us to be clear as we go forward with the joint implementation plan, who will be responsible for what. We are working with the member states to be sure that this does not just become a tool that we can show today, but it's something that we are all committed to continuing to develop and we continue to use. And so after today's launch, you will ask me what next. We are going to continue to the stakeholders to be able to put in place protocols with member states for the data production, etc., for us to use them. We have a proposed governance framework that we have put in place to ensure that this work continues. I mentioned from the very onset that we had special technical groups of focal points who have been appointed by the member states. They remain in place. They have remained in place throughout every stage of us for the last 14 months. We have to work together with us, together with the OECS Commission. We have what we call the joint national teams, the implementation team, who will continue to work for the implementation on the joint implementation plan and to seek funding for some of the collective initiatives. We also have what we call a regional oversight committee, where the ECCB OECS, joined by the CDB and CDF, will remain to provide oversight to the project in the coming years. And also today, we chose to use the Economic Affairs Council as the platform for launch, because the Economic Affairs Council of the OECS remains the governing body over this area. And we propose that we will be having to report to the council, as the minister himself spoke, on a regular basis. So here we are. The next steps, we are going to be working with the member states on the agreed protocols for the data production and for data sharing. We are going to be continuing with the ECB to clarify the housing and the upkeep of the scorecard by our two institutions, our shared commitment. We expect that we will be providing annual reports and updates on the scorecard to the Economic Affairs Council. And together we'll be launching a publication and advocacy program so that member states, all stakeholders, can receive the report, can have an opportunity to access it, to use it for their own decision making. So this is the journey, and this is where we're heading. We've come a long way, but we've not completed the journey. The most important part of it, the outcome today that we are launching, is the ODS scorecard. And my colleague, Jan, is going to speak to you on that. But I wanted to be sure we all understand the full context of where we started and where we're heading. And I know that everyone on this platform with me today are part of that journey and committed to the full use of the scorecard. So I don't have to repeat the quote. I put it there and I smile because I've heard so many people say it today. So I think that is the quote of the day, Alicia. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I thank you as I hand over back to you, Alicia.
Thank you so very much, Director. And I must say, great minds think alike, because we have been hearing this quote throughout this entire event. And so we want to thank you all once again for being our partners in this. Now, I do need to say, this has been a lot of information to take in. So we do have an opportunity for questions after the next presentation. So if you're feeling any burning questions, put them together, drop them in the chat so that we can have a more organized way of responding to it. And so we do have at this point our item on our agenda, handing over to our colleague, because that is what he is. Jan is really part of our team. We don't see him as, you know, someone who sits very far away from us. We have been interacting over the last 14 months, and Jan has been so critical to where we are here today. So without further ado, Jan Relander, Head of Country Diagnostics and Strategy at the Oecs Development Center. He will be presenting to us on this scorecard that we have been hearing so much about. So Jan, over to you.
Dear Alicia, thank you so much. It's really very much mutual. I very much feel like I would be sitting with you in the room right there. And with all protocols observed, to all of you, it's really a wonderful pleasure to be able to present this work. And also thank you for all everything you've said in leading up to this. It's really been a long process, and in all the speeches that have been given, I've really felt that we have this common and mutual understanding of what it is that we're trying to do here. So many of you have picked up on the various elements of what this is trying to do. So now it's my very great pleasure to show you what this actually looks like in practice. I hope that it'll fulfill all the great expectations that have already been created and give you a good sense of what we do. The scorecard here really is good for 5 uses that I would like to highlight as I walk you through it. And the first use that you can use this for is really to understand historic achievements and trends as you go through policymaking, as you look at your strategies. The scorecard, and I think you will appreciate that very soon, really is a tool you can look at quick to see, well, how have we been doing on this in the past and what really is realistic. It's also very useful to compare between all the member states where and how you see the priorities for your development. And this is really the result of this common process of target setting, where all member states have come together and really set their own targets. For a long time in this process, we had proposed targets on the basis of international benchmarking, and they have been the basis for inspiration. But it's really in this version that you see now that every target that you see has gone through an approval process, and each member state has said, yes, this is the target we want for us. So thereby what you see now as the targets is a great panoply of the different types of ambitions and different types of ideas about development you have in the region. And I think that's really a value in and of itself. Then, of course, the big next use is about confirming trajectories of achieved results, really having accountability to ambition. And this is something, as you go forward, you will see the scorecard. And here I can start showing you a bit how it works. Shows you for a number of indicators where you are today and where you want to go. And so today, of course, moves. Today we're already in 2022. Soon we will be in 2023, etc. And this is really about confirming: will you be on the trajectory towards the target that you have set out? Will you be helping you to be accountable to your ambitions? And then the next use that you can use this for is really about learning from each other about what works. You will also see then across time, and in some of the examples I will show, that there are some member states that seem to be doing particularly well on an indicators and others that seem to be particularly challenged. And I think it would be wonderful if going forward, the Economic Affairs Council and more broadly institutions and people across the region were to use this and say, hey, look at this. It looks like Grenada has been doing really well on agricultural productivity. Let's go and call up Grenada and ask them to find out what's been going on. And similar examples like that, really that this can be the tool to help you who to ask the question on how to do this well. And then, of course, finally, and this is really where we want to put the onus on the Economic Affairs Council, it's really about setting priorities for action. And Deputy Governor Henry said it really well when she said, there's no performance without accountability. And so the use here really is about using this tool to say, if we're not doing well on an indicator, we need to take action and we really need to focus on this to make sure we get back on track. And it's when this use happens that this tool really will play its full role. Those are the 5 uses. Then there's 2 needs to make this work. Need number 1 is data. We've spoken about that and the tool highlights it. And need number 2 is this dedication to staying on target and making choices for development. As you will see with this tool, not everything goes or will go as set out in the ambition. And then you need to be willing to make the choices, to make the investment. And $1 and an hour invested into A cannot be used for B. And this is really where that dedication needs to happen. So with that, let me really show you how it works. You have the 3 pillars of the development strategy. You have the economic pillar here. Then we have the environmental pillar. And then we have social and human development. For each pillar here, you have the indicators that we have selected together with member states through a long process as the key indicators, the key results that you want to track, and also the indicators for which there's data. And all of these together, what you see here is the regional perspective. You see across the economic field, today the OECS is at about 63.8% towards the ambition set for 2030. In black, you see the starting point, that was 2020, and yellow shows you 2021. That's the latest point in time. And as time passes, we hope that this gauge here will move up and become green at some point. This is, of course, what you want to look at. The indicators we have here are GDP as the broad top measure for economic development, and GDP per capita really as a measure of living standards, value added per person as a measure of productivity, foreign direct investment, exports, tourism, agriculture, fishing, public debt, and individuals using the internet as a measure for digitalization. I will not go into everything in detail, just let me show you how this works when we click onto the next view. So now we go from the broad regional view where you see the regional summary. We're moving on to the specific view by member country. So this shows you the GDP targets, and the targets you see here are the targets for 2030 as identified and picked by each member country. You see where the OECS is overall at 55.6% of achievement. And you see how different countries have put in place different ambitions for growth. St. Lucia here, for example, is aiming to achieve an annual growth rate of around 5.96, almost 6%. Dominica wants to achieve a rate of 4.7, so almost 5%. And so you see how the rates are all somewhere in between. And what you will want, on the one hand, the tool shows you how this has been doing in the past. So you clearly see the COVID pandemic. You clearly see also still the impact of the financial crisis. And you see the level of the ambition and therefore the level of the efforts that need to be undertaken. When I go on to the next view, we'll see GDP per capita. Which again is the GDP target, but divided by the number of people. So you have a measure of the living standard. And here again, you see different levels of ambition across the region and different levels of growth rates. And I think what's nice here really is that the overall value for the OECS is really the reflection of all of the targets that members have picked for themselves as their level of ambition for increasing increasing living standards. Let me show you the next item, which is foreign direct investment, which of course is an important source for, oh no, this is value added. Let me just quickly jump this in the interest of time. The next item here is foreign direct investment. And I think this is already showing you how this tool can be very interesting. Foreign direct investment, of course, is an important source of finance for development ambitions. Given the small size of the members of the OECS, it is necessarily going to be very volatile because a large deal in 1 year is going to be a much higher percentage of GDP than a small deal in the next year. So there's always going to be a lot of volatility. But you can see roughly similar trends. You can also see here historically which members have been more successful than others in terms of the attraction of FDI. And very much you can see that there are very different perspectives of the role that members want to see for foreign direct investment in their own overall strategies. You see that St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada have put in place very ambitious roles, values for FDI. So clearly a strategy that really wants to aim at attracting FDI as a key element for finance. And many of the other members also having, of course, ambitious FDI objectives, but not quite as high. So a little bit less of an emphasis on foreign direct investment in terms of the strategic choices. And this, of course, reflects then the levels of achievement vis-a-vis the goals set out. So basically, where an indicator is red today, it means that the ambition is very high. And an indicator that is green today means the target set is already closer to where the country is today. Let me move on to trade and exports, which I think is another very interesting area. Exports of goods and services, of course, are important elements of economic development and economic growth. And we have split this up into two, into exports of goods on the one hand and exports of services on the other hand. And here you see again that there is quite a difference in emphasis, where it's primarily St. Lucia with a very strong ambition for increasing its exports of goods, bringing them back to some of the peak values that St. Lucia has been able to achieve in the past, as you can see here, even though it has been quite volatile. Whereas most of the other members see more of a continuation and only a limited level of growth in terms of exports of goods. Now, when we move on to exports of services, so really this decision how important is manufacturing, how important are services for the economy. You see that across the board, the ambition for driving services, having services and service exports, including, of course, tourism, drive the economy is much more pronounced across the region, reflecting also the reality of what really drives economies. And you see here very high levels of ambition in terms of further pushing exports of tourism, and again, exports of services. And again, here you can see the big impact of the COVID crisis and this ambition to go back to and further than where things were in the past. And you also see that a lot of work remains to be done to really achieve these ambitions and make this level of economic activity and service exports happen. With that, let me just very quickly on this broad side here of economic development. Here we look at intra-regional exports, which overall present some share of exports, not a very high share. And you also see that there is a good ambition. You can see across the region, there is the ambition to really double their share and the amount of exports of goods into the region. But at the same time, you can see that because the level has been low, this doubling doesn't represent a massive dynamic. It's more this idea of a steady improvement of regional integration, which I think is going to be very important of this idea of doing things together forward and go together, don't go too fast, but make sure that you move forward. When we look at tourism here, we see, of course, the big impact of the COVID pandemic. And we also see, again, different objectives in terms of development, in terms of the role of tourism for the development of the national economy, where you see that essentially St. Lucia and Antigua want to kind of go back to where things were, but not massively higher than that. Because their tourism, of course, already plays a massively important role, whereas most of the other countries where tourism plays a little bit less of a role still want to grow this much further, and you see this reflected in the gauges. And then a very interesting next element that we've also pointed out in our assessment of the strategy is tourism receipts per se are one thing, but what would be very important is to emphasize receipts per arrival to bring them up. And you can see here, interestingly, that in 2021, you had a massive jump in terms of the receipts per arrival in tourism. And we believe that this is mainly due to the fact that there were much fewer cruise ships. And so all the tourist arrivals were much more concentrated in hotel guests and overnight stays, which of course have a much higher spending per capita than cruise ship tourists. And it shows you also at the same time, it can show you a bit the potential way forward, where kind of to diversify the tourism offering if you want to go into higher receipts per arrival. So to have a manageable amount of tourists, but at the same time focus on higher quality and revenue segments. Let me just come here back to the main page to also look at time and not spend too much time with this. Just to say here, we have agriculture, still public sector debt, and the deputy governor will be very happy to hear that actually the targets for debt reduction put into the scorecard are all more ambitious than the 60% by 2035 target set out by the ECCB. So as long as countries stay within the framework of this scorecard, there is no problem at all with also making the ECCB target. And you can see overall the achievement is in yellow. For the environmental indicators, let me be quick. You see some here are in red, and I will really focus here on the renewable electricity to show you an indicator that we believe is very interesting, holds a lot of potential, and really also tells you the story of the scorecard. When we look into renewable energy, and it will come up here in just about a second, you will see that the ambitions are quite significant. You can see on the one hand that the trajectory has been fairly constant over the last 20 years. There has been very little change in each of the member states. And at the same time, you can see that the ambitions in terms of the share of renewable energy and overall electricity output that countries have committed to are very, very high. And you can see for some countries, they reflect the commissions that countries have set out in the nationally determined contributions in the UN process. And for some countries, actually, I think there's been a realization that the commitments made to the UN process have been so ambitious that they are unlikely to be met. So countries have picked somewhat reduced goals, but that still are quite ambitious when you look at past performance. And I think we are discussing this a lot in the assessment report that we're doing of this importance of really making this choice for moving into renewable energy, making those investments and seeing this also as a real potential for future economic transformation. But you can see here how there is no way any of these ambitions are going to be achieved without major changes in policy frameworks and investment strategies, because the past lines are flat. So this means without doing anything, these lines will continue to be flat straight out, and you will still be at exactly the same level in 2030. So this is a key area where an ambition has set out, and the scorecard really tells you that now action must follow, and without really dedicated action, nothing much is going to happen, and these gauges are going to stay where they are. So I think it's a beautiful case for how the scorecard really can work. Now let me very quickly move on to the social indicators, where overall here we are at 61.5% of achievement. This first indicator here, the formal employment to population ratio, is an indicator that we have put together ourselves together with the OECS and by working with all of the social security boards, asking them for their information. And that is because the official unemployment statistics, unfortunately, there haven't been enough unemployment statistics across members to be able to use them on a regular basis for the scorecard. So that's why we had to go into this formal employment to population ratio indicator. This indicator, formal employment to population, shows you the number of people registered with social security services divided by the total number of people of working age. So this, where every employment and every job in the country is formalized in the sense that every job holder is also registered with national security agencies, this basically is your employment to population ratio. Whereas where a large part of your economy is informal in the sense that people have jobs and they get paid, but they probably get paid only in cash and they are not registered anywhere with national social security, then this indicator is going to be quite low. And it shows you where this indicator is low. It shows you that there is a high level of informality in your economy. And something that's really struck us here is that this indicator has been pretty much constant for almost all countries for 20 years. So it shows you that the economic structure, the structure of employment in the economy has almost not changed in any of the countries. At the same time, you can of course see that some countries like, for example, St. Lucia, which shows this fairly high share of informal economy, high share of informality plus significant unemployment, has put out a very ambitious target of significantly improving its share of formal employment and reducing both unemployment and informality. And again, this is a wonderful case where this really can help to follow up on this and see if this works, see if the policies that will be taken in place can help to move St. Lucia and the other countries up here. And at the same time, you can, for example, see here that Grenada was able to jump here back in the 2010s. And so it would be interesting to understand what is it that happened then to make this possible. A next indicator here is international homicides. So safety is an important value for human and social development. And it is something that is to some extent a challenge for all member countries. And you can see that all member countries have put in ambitious targets to really, where today the region overall finds itself at about 1/3 of achievement, to really improve the safety situation and bring down crimes and homicide significantly. So this really underscores this is another important objective of policy and really government action. And similarly for other crimes. Now let me jump on the next area as health policy, which of course, especially with the COVID pandemic, we've been reminded of the importance. All countries here share a combined ambition to really improve investment into health, improve spending on health. And at the same time, and I think this is very important, all countries share an ambition to really take some of the burden away from individuals. So this shows you out-of-pocket expenditures as a share of health expenditures. So essentially, which part of health spending do individuals have to carry out of their own pocket as opposed to this being carried through insurance or government programs. And you can see that this is, in some countries, this share is very high, and there is a broader ambition to having more of a burden sharing and more of a broader social protection and social inclusion system. And in this area, especially universal healthcare schemes that are being discussed in many of the members are very, very important elements of creating this broader basis for inclusion and making healthcare affordable for everybody. And again, here, this tool can help you stay on track and can help you learn from each other. Where do these schemes work best? What are some ideas to bring down these out-of-pocket expenditures? Then we have maternal mortality ratios, where countries want to see important improvements. For many, they're already quite good, but some countries are challenged in terms of their health system, in terms of providing maternal mortality, and might also want to identify with others what kind of the best policies could be to improve this situation. And similarly here for neonatal mortality rates. And one key item here is obesity as a lead indicator for cardiovascular disease. You see how the whole region has been on an upward trend, and everybody wants to bring the trend down, except for St. Kitts and Nevis and St. Vincent, who realized that already stopping the upward trend will be an important achievement. So this is clearly something to be followed, because this is something that requires different choices by everybody. Now let me quickly come back. The last block we have in these social indicators here is about employment, is about education, where we really want to focus on pre-primary enrollment in education. Broadly, we've seen enrollment in education. So kids being at school is an achievement, is not really a challenge anymore. Now it's about kids in kindergarten, in preschool activities. And then it's very much about increasing the share of trained teachers in primary and secondary education. And here, let me just show you, excuse me, the share of teachers, trained teachers in secondary education. To give you an appreciation of the levels, pretty much the region wants 80% of teachers in secondary education to be properly trained to ensure that, you know, investing in quality education and making sure young people learn the skills they need for life. You need to have the best teachers possible. Everybody needs to make progress here. And some countries have higher levels of this in the past than others. So this again would be a great place to start learning from each other. What are kind of the best programs to make this happen? Now let me just conclude with the last block of the scorecard. And this is really, and Permanent Secretary Joseph has mentioned this. There's a number of indicators here for which we did not have enough data across members to be able to really use them for the scorecard, even though we believe that they would be crucially important. Top is the unemployment rate, labor statistics, which I'm sure you all appreciate that they are important, but that's really something to invest in. And the second very important one would be poverty rates. We all hear a lot of talking about poverty, but there's very, very little data about poverty. And this is something we would really like to have much better data on to be able to follow this up on. And then an important area, when we've come to tertiary enrollment, we've found we believe it's an important indicator of human capital development to have the share of tertiary enrollment, but especially because of the role of specialized education and especially medical schools for foreign students. It's very difficult to have comparative data here. And it would be important to invest in having an understanding of the population of the region. How well is human capital development going? With this, let me stop my screen share here and just really re-emphasize the importance of using the scorecard going forward, checking whether you stay on track to your ambitions, using it to make decisions about investments. And we're very, very much looking forward to seeing this through and hope that this can help for a better future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan, for such a comprehensive presentation. So colleagues on the call, if you have any questions for Jan at this point in time, he is here, he is ready, he is prepared to answer any questions regarding clarification, more information. And if there is anything that you need to know, as I said, you can either just raise your hand. The icon is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You will see a button that says reactions, and you can just raise your hand and open your mic, and then we can have a conversation from there. So I'm just going to give it a few seconds, you know, gather your thoughts, you know. I know Jan did a fantastic job. Thank you so much, Jan. It was quite a comprehensive presentation. And we will be interacting with this tool a lot more moving forward, not just on an OECS level, but also on a member state level. And as our speakers before had encouraged, please use the tool. It was developed with us in mind. It was made by us, for us, and we want to ensure that we are able to stay on track. All right, so Jan, I think your presentation was fantastically clear because we don't have any questions on our chat and we don't have any hands raised. So at this point in time, we will move to the last item on our agenda. I would like to introduce once again our EAC chair, Mr. Minister Wayne Gerard, to deliver the closing remarks. Minister Gerard, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Jan, for your very insightful presentation. And I look forward to spending some time further acquainting myself with it. The launch of the monitoring framework is but the beginning of the work to be done in implementing the OECS development strategy and to achieve key priorities that our member states have articulated throughout this process. We are indeed thankful for the collaboration between the OECS Commission and the European Union for providing the funds to undertake such an important initiative, and to the OECD Development Center for supporting the development of the ODS monitoring framework. We also wish to thank OECS member states for making the time from the busy schedules to participate in this meeting. Having said this, I encourage OECS members to make maximum use of the scorecard as a tool for measuring the attainment of their country-specific targets in the ODS. Importantly, I also wish to encourage that all efforts towards strengthening our ability to collect and report data be employed, as data availability will be a central necessity to sustain the use of the scorecard. With this said, on behalf of the OECS community, I thank you for supporting this initiative, and I ask for your continued support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, and thank you all for being here with us today. We truly appreciate it. We look forward to our continued partnership on this journey. We are here, we are available. Make sure if you have any issues, any questions, or if you just need a little bit more information, please reach out to our technical officers, and we are willing to bring you on board to clarify, because as we have heard here today, this tool is essential to build our region, and we are looking forward to working with you all. On behalf of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States and all of our partners and the chair of our Economic Affairs Council, my name is Alicia Ali. Thank you so very much once again. I can't thank you all enough for joining us for this event today. And remember, as always, we are one community growing together. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.